Who doesn't love a good JRPG? Well, I used to love them. I used to play a lot of them. I remember playing Dragon Warrior when it was new, Final Fantasy, Paladin's Quest on the Super Nintendo, 7th Saga, Final Fantasy II, which was really 4, Final Fantasy III, which was really 6, Secret of Mana, if you count that, although some may say it's more of an action-adventure game. I played a ton of JRPGs back in the day, but for whatever reason, I fell out of love with them. The last one I remember playing and absolutely loving that really, truly fits the definition of JRPG in my opinion is Xenoblade Chronicles. I actually imported that from Europe, and I got a physical copy with the red controller and did a review on it. And my review had more views on YouTube than IGN's review of the game. I ended up taking that review down because I decided not to show my face in any of my videos, and so I got rid of a whole bunch of popular videos. Wish I hadn't done that, but what's done is done. So having fallen out of love with them, Expedition 33 releases, and here I am, falling in love all over again. Except an issue has come up. Whenever I refer to Expedition 33 as a JRPG, inevitably a bunch of people rise up to say, "Wait a minute, Fox, that's not a JRPG. It's made in France. That's a French RPG." Because Japanese RPGs are made in Japan. And you know what? If you don't think about it too hard, that makes sense. That seems logical and reasonable. After all, like many of the detractors say, JRPG, it's in the name. Japanese role-playing game. And after all, doesn't that J stand for Japanese, as in made in Japan or made by Japanese people? Well, that brings up the interesting question. What really is a JRPG? Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Fox with RealMarcFoxx, and this is your home for rational, reasonable, real gamers.
You can't handle the truth!
Before we get too deep into exactly what a JRPG is, we need to discuss the fact that genres are somewhat loose terms. After all, not everyone agrees on games fitting well into one or two or even three particular genres. Some games are hybrids and combine different genres. Sometimes games become just different enough from the main genre they sprouted from that we give them a sub-genre name, such as tactical role-playing game, instead of just RPG. You could even call something a tactical JRPG. There are often genres that just don't have the clearest of definitions, and then there are some that are, well, quite frankly, quite open-ended. We used to call games adventure games, but what the hell does that mean anymore? I mean, just because the game allows you to have an adventure in it, it's an adventure? Not quite. Nowadays, JRPG is a genre that's been well established, and despite what some people claim, it's long been in use. I had an argument with a Japanese guy on X, formerly known as Twitter, and he insisted that the term was fairly recent, coming about in the mid-2010s, I believe he claimed. However, I remember using and seeing the term, reading it in magazines and seeing it on the internet in the late 90s and early 2000s. The term has been in use for a long time, and generally speaking, it was used to refer to a special kind of RPG, originally based on the Ultima and Wizardry series that was made in Japan. But nowadays, I'm going to argue that it doesn't make any sense to define a genre by the location where the game is made. After all, if two games are virtually identical in style, they look very similar, they have similar music, similar characters, almost identical gameplay, same kind of world layout, but one is made in Germany and the other's made in Japan, does that make them a different genre? Would that make any sense? I mean, after all, if they make an action movie in Japan, does it become a Japanese movie and not an action movie? Or does it just become an action movie made in Japan? Now, to think about this, let's ask a couple different questions. Are we saying that a JRPG must be made physically within the country of Japan? Because if that's the case, the question comes up. What about a Japanese developer forming a studio in a different nation? Let's say Squaresoft forms a studio in America and has mostly or even all Japanese people working there, and then they make a role-playing game. By the way, this actually happened. Secret of Evermore was made in the United States. I don't know the racial makeup of the development team, but it was a Square-run Japanese development team in the sense that Squaresoft owned it, and Squaresoft is a Japanese company. So we have this Japanese company with a studio in Japan making an RPG, and the RPG follows the similar trends, style, aesthetics, gameplay, world design of the games they've made in Japan that have been referred to as JRPGs. So, does this new RPG suddenly stop being a JRPG because it's not made physically within the borders of Japan? Does it now become an ARPG? Not action RPG, American RPG. Maybe we should call it a URPG for USA. You may think this is an unreasonable argument, but it's actually not. Consider how many studios Ubisoft has and where they're located in different countries. Consider Electronic Arts and all of its studios in different countries. Many large publishers and game studios have satellite studios in other nations, even with people from those nations working on games. So if we're going to argue that the game has to be made physically within Japan, that essentially nullifies the purpose of the genre. Because at that point, you're not saying that JRPG is a unique genre from RPG, you're just saying that JRPG is simply an RPG that's made in Japan. So, if a development studio located in Japan, made up of Japanese people, makes an RPG, say Dragon's Dogma, is that now a JRPG? I haven't seen anyone call that a JRPG. It's made in Japan, it's made by Japanese people, and it is an RPG, but no one refers to it as a JRPG. So why is that? Well, it's really simple, because it's not of the genre JRPG. What about Dark Souls or Elden Ring from Software? That's certainly an RPG, and I've heard very few people ever argue it's not, but is it a JRPG? Well, I haven't heard anybody argue it is, but it's an RPG made in Japan. Now let's take a look at another example. Let's say you have a Japanese game development studio, but they have one or more non-Japanese people working on their games. By the way, this is a real scenario. Look it up. Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 for the NES, 2 and 3 never originally released in the United States, were programmed and partially designed by Nasir Gabelli. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he's an Iranian-American programmer. No, he's not Japanese. And as far as I know, he never got any Japanese citizenship either, because he left Japan shortly after leaving Squaresoft, from what I can tell. So if one of the biggest names working on 3 of the very first JRPGs is not Japanese and originally is Iranian and lived in America, then does that nullify Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 from qualifying as JRPGs? I've never heard anyone argue that it does. And now that you know about Nasir Gabelli, even if you didn't know about him before, are you changing your mind now and claiming that Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 are no longer JRPGs because a non-Japanese person worked on them? Oh, but wait, Fox, it was made in Japan, so it still counts. But again, what if Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 were made exactly the same way by Japanese people who just happened to be living in the United States at the time, working for that Japanese development studio? Would you then claim that Final Fantasies 1, 2, and 3 are no longer JRPGs because they're not made within the physical boundaries of the nation of Japan? I doubt anyone would try to argue that. You see, we can ask lots more questions along these lines. What if there's a Japanese developer located in Japan, but the entire team is composed of non-Japanese people? The developer is Japanese in the sense that, well, that's the nation where the company is located. It's a company in Japan, but no one there is actually ethnically Japanese nor has Japanese citizenship. Then they make an RPG that's very similar to old school Final Fantasies or Dragon Quest. Is this a JRPG? Well, by this argument of made in Japan, and it's an RPG, then it is. But what if they make an RPG that's not like JRPGs that we know today? It's not turn-based, it's action-based, like Dark Souls. It's a Souls-like. Does that become a JRPG because of where it's made? What if a studio has 50% ethnically Japanese people, Japanese citizens in Japan, but the other 50% are not Japanese, and they make an RPG, turn-based, anime aesthetic, whatever you want to say, whatever you think defines a JRPG, is that still a JRPG? I mean, half the team is Japanese, and it is in Japan, but again, it draws the question, what really is a JRPG? If JRPG is a genre of game, and not defining the nation in which the game was developed, then it actually doesn't matter what nation the game is developed in. The Japanese of JRPG does not refer to the country where the game is being made or is made. It refers to the country where the genre originated from. This is where the confusion lies, and this is where it no longer seems reasonable or logical. After all, I'm going to give you a few more examples. Take, for example, a coffee press. This particular coffee press is known as a French press. But guess what? It wasn't designed in France. Arguably, it was designed in Italy, but it was popularized in France and took the nomenclature French press. Now, the French press that I typically use is made in Brazil. So, does that mean it's not a French press because it's not made in France or from Italy, even though it's called a French press, though it originally came from Italy? Now that it's been made in Brazil, do we change the name and say, no, that's not a French press, Fox, that's a Brazilian press, which sounds more like something a woman would undergo before going to the beach, am I right? Obviously not. The French press is a French press because of the type of object it is, not because of where it was manufactured. Take another example, French fries. Again, false nomenclature in the sense that they're not originally French, but the term French just stuck. French fries does not refer to potatoes which are fried within the nation of France. It refers to a certain way of frying strips of potatoes. Now we can argue, well, if the strips are really large or triangular, are they still French fries? Well, if they're made out to be wedges, they're potato wedges, right? And while there is some variation in exactly how we define genres, such as how we define food, I mean, after all, if you put broccoli in your spaghetti, is it still spaghetti? Don't get caught up on the details of how these things can vary, but take a look at the nomenclature that's used for it. Another example, the German Shepherd. This is a type of shepherd dog which was popularized or may have originated from Germany. For whatever reason, the term German stuck, and from that point forward, everyone referred to this subspecies of dog as a German Shepherd. I used to have a German Shepherd, and let me tell you something, he wasn't born in Germany. No one ever told me he's not a German Shepherd because he wasn't born in Germany. I'd never heard that, no one's ever argued that, and I'm pretty sure no one will ever argue that, because everyone understands that the nomenclature of German does not require that the object or thing originate in Germany. It doesn't require it be manufactured in Germany. It doesn't require that it be born in Germany. My German Shepherd is a German Shepherd because of the type of subspecies of dog that he is, not based on where he was born. And yet another example, Swiss cheese, a type of cheese that was popularized in Switzerland. It's made all over the world now, and I've never heard anyone say, "That's not Swiss cheese, Fox. That's cheese made in America. Swiss cheese is cheese made in Switzerland." Well, does that mean if a type of cheddar cheese is made in Switzerland, it automatically becomes Swiss cheese? Swiss cheese is a type of cheese. It doesn't mean cheese made in Switzerland. So I've given you numerous examples of why the idea of JRPG means RPG made in Japan doesn't actually make any logical or reasonable sense. It's not even possible for the argument to stand on its own merits. When an argument is self-defeating, you know it's bad, because you can't even clearly define exactly how a JRPG is a JRPG if it's only made in the nation of Japan. After all, like I said, Dark Souls, Dragon's Dogma, and any other what we consider not JRPGs, action RPGs and other types, would qualify as JRPGs because you're saying that the J of JRPG is not defining the genre, it's defining the nation where the game was made. In that case, JRPG is not a subgenre of RPG, it's a nation where an RPG is being made, Japan. And that is literally not what you or anyone else believes. Your argument falls apart on its own merits, or lack thereof. So in like manner to insisting that Swiss cheese is cheese made in Switzerland, or German shepherds are shepherds born in Germany, or French fries are potatoes fried in France, anyone trying to argue that a JRPG is an RPG made in Japan is arguing essentially nonsense, even though it's understandable why they would make that mistake. So, I understand why people make that mistake. It seems logical on the surface, but if you start digging just a little bit, it completely falls apart. JRPG is a genre, and while we won't always agree on exactly what's required for the genre, there is a general sense of what is or isn't a JRPG. I don't think most people would argue Dark Souls or Dragon's Dogma is a JRPG. I don't think anyone would argue Assassin's Creed is a JRPG. I don't think anyone would argue Call of Duty is a JRPG. But people may argue about whether Secret of Mana is a JRPG because it's not turn-based. Does it have to be turn-based? Does it have to have an anime aesthetic? Does it have to be based on Japanese culture, as I've heard some people argue? And I would say to these, not necessarily. But if you don't have any of these supposed have-tos, if you have none of them, then arguably it's no longer a JRPG because it's so far from the genre that it might as well be, well, just an RPG. We've seen one of the most popular JRPG franchises in the world, Final Fantasy, the other one being Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy shift from turn-based to more action-based. And yet during this entire time, I have not seen any major argument out there about whether it's stopped being a JRPG. You see, we tend to think of Final Fantasy as a JRPG because it has the Final Fantasy name, but the name doesn't make it the genre. Because Final Fantasy Dissidia is basically a fighting game. There are lots of games with the name Final Fantasy that really don't fit the JRPG genre. And there are lots of other games with very different names made all over the world that would, in my opinion, fit the definition of JRPG. Once you understand that JRPG is a genre and the Japanese refers to the country where the genre originated, everything begins to fall in line. Just don't confuse the J, meaning Japan is where the game has to be made. That would be a mistake in my opinion, because no genre anywhere is defined by the nation in which that particular thing is created. So to sum it all up in short, don't get caught up on the J, meaning that it has to be Japanese in the game's actual origin, where the game is made or who makes the game, but focus on the fact that sometimes genres, products, things take on the name of a country because that's where they originated from in the first place, not because that's where that specific thing is from. The German Shepherd is a German Shepherd born all over the world. Swiss cheese is made all over the world. French fries are made all over the world, including in Japan, where I spent roughly 3.5 years, and I had plenty of French fries while I was there, probably too many. And like all of those things being made all over the world, JRPGs are also made all over the world, because it's a genre, not a country where a video game is made. Thank you so much for joining me. I know this one's going to be controversial because there are a bunch of Japanophiles out there who insist that Japan is so unique and special that they alone have the rights to the genre of JRPG. And yes, I agree. Japan is unique and special. A lot of countries are. I spent, like I said, almost 3.5 years living and working in Japan. I've also studied abroad there twice. So believe me when I tell you, I know a little bit about Japan. I know a little bit about the culture in the country. I have love for Japan. I absolutely love my time there. But at the same time, you have to be logical and reasonable about things. And JRPG is not something owned exclusively by Japanese people living within the nation of Japan. It is a genre that was created in that nation, and it is a genre which can now be created in any other nation around the world. Thank you so much for joining me once again. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, leave your comments down below. I know some of you are going to disagree with me. Don't forget that you can also join the channel for $1.99, and if you'd like, you can pick up a copy of my novel, New Tokyo, Sci-Fi Cyberpunk, link in the description. As always, my friends, stay real, keep playing, and never forget, yesterday's tomorrow is today's today. See you in the next one.